They say some houses have memories. But what if the house itself is the memory? What if it's alive, and it's hungry? This is the story of Olivia Kane, an architect who saw a ruin and dreamed of a home. But the home she chose had dreams of its own nightmares, to be precise. When Olivia bought the old Ashmore house on the edge of Briar Hollow, she thought she was getting a bargain. A decaying Victorian beauty, wrapped in ivy, just waiting for a second chance. The locals all gave her the same cryptic warning: never stay past midnight. Olivia, a rational woman who believed in blueprints and support beams, just laughed it off. Ghosts, whispers. Please. She dealt in angles and walls, not shadows and secrets. The house was a project, a canvas. It had potential. The real estate agent, however, seemed less enthusiastic. He avoided her gaze as he handed over the tarnished brass keys. His parting words were odd, unsettling. If it starts speaking, he'd muttered, don't answer it. She assumed he was joking, a bit of local folklore to spook the city girl. She was wrong. The first week was deceptively calm. Olivia mapped out her renovations, dreaming of polished floors and sunlit rooms. But the nights were strange. A deep, penetrating cold would settle in, a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty windows. It seemed to emanate from the very bones of the house. Her cat, Milo, a brave little explorer, refused to go near the west hallway. He'd just sit at its entrance, fur on end, staring down the corridor as if watching an invisible parade. Olivia brushed it off. Old houses make strange noises. Cats are weird. It was all perfectly logical. On the 7th night, everything changed. Olivia was in the grand living room, her blueprints spread across a dusty table, when she heard a protracted creak from the floor above. She told herself it was just the old wood settling. Happens all the time. But then came a second sound, one she couldn't rationalize away. A soft sigh, so close it felt like someone was breathing right against her ear. She froze. Every muscle tensed. The air grew heavy, and the magnificent crystal chandelier above her began to sway, its glass pendants tinkling softly. Not a single window was open. When she dared to move, her eyes fell on her coffee mug. The dark liquid was trembling, tiny ripples disturbing its surface, and that's when she first heard the voice. It wasn't a clear word, not at first. Just a murmur, a sibilant whisper that seemed to slither from inside the walls themselves. It moved like water through old pipes, rising and falling, a phantom current of sound. Then, it spoke her name, Olivia. The sound was raspy, ancient. Panic seized her. She ran through the house, pounding on the walls, shouting into the darkness, demanding to know who was there. Her only answer was a soft, hollow laugh that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Shaking, she pulled out her phone and hit record, hoping to capture proof that she wasn't losing her mind. But when she played it back, there was nothing. Just the dead, empty silence of the house. The next morning, her fully charged phone was completely dead, and every clock in the house the grandfather clock in the hall. Her digital watch, the oven display, was frozen at exactly 12 o'clock. The haunting was no longer subtle. Footsteps echoed in empty hallways when she was alone. The floorboards above her creaked in a steady, walking rhythm. One evening, while brushing her hair in front of a cracked antique mirror, she saw it, a flicker of movement in the reflection behind her. A shadow, tall and gaunt, detaching itself from the other shadows in the room. She spun around, heart hammering against her ribs. There was nothing there, just an empty room and the suffocating silence. The outside world began to recede. The mailman stopped coming to the door, later confessing to a neighbor that he felt a malevolent presence watching him from the windows whenever he walked up the path. The house was isolating her, cutting her off. At night, the whispers grew bolder, more frequent. They came from beneath the floorboards, from the soot-blackened throat of the fireplace, and most terrifyingly from the dusty, silent piano in the corner, which would occasionally play a single discordant note that hung in the air like a scream. By the third week, Olivia was a ghost in her own home. Sleep was a forgotten luxury. Her eyes were hollow, her nerves frayed to the breaking point. The voice was evolving, learning. It began to mimic her. She'd hear recordings of her own phone conversations playing back from empty rooms. Once her phone rang, and when she answered, she heard her own voice, distorted and cold, calling her name from the top of the stairs. She was living in a terrifying echo chamber, and the house was the one conducting the orchestra. Then, Milo disappeared. She searched every corner, her calls growing more frantic. She finally found his collar lying on the floor just outside the forbidden west hallway. The leather was surrounded by deep, vicious claw marks gouged into the wood, as if he'd been dragged away, fighting for his life. That was the final straw. Sobbing, she threw clothes into a bag, her only thought to escape. She grabbed the handle of the massive front door and pulled. It didn't budge. She tried again, panic rising like bile in her throat. She ran to the back door, the side door, every window. They were all sealed. The metal handles of the doors crumbled into rust and dust in her hands. The windows, which should have shown the afternoon sun, were black, opaque voids, reflecting only her terrified face. The walls began to hum, a low-frequency vibration that she felt deep in her bones. The air grew thick with a palpable energy, and the voice spoke again, no longer a whisper, but a clear, commanding tone that resonated from the very structure around her. "Stay," it said. "You made me remember." "Remember what? Who are you?" Olivia screamed, her voice cracking with terror. The answer came from the walls, the floor, the ceiling, a chorus of resonant, ancient power. "I am the house." Then the pounding began. A deafening, rhythmic banging from inside the walls. Shapes began to press out from under the peeling, floral wallpaper. Distorted faces, their mouths stretched wide in silent screams, pushing through the plaster like a horrifying birth. She stumbled back, falling, and scrambled for the basement stairs, the only place left to run. The air in the stairwell was thick with the smell of damp earth and rot. She fell down the last few steps, landing hard on the cold dirt floor. At the bottom, she saw what was once the foundation wall. It was now covered in handprints, thousands of them, overlapping, etched into the stone. The voice was back, whispering beside her, its tone now disturbingly soft, almost kind. "They built me with their blood," it murmured. "You just woke me up." As her eyes adjusted, the beam of her flashlight fell on the ground at her feet. The ground shifted slightly. Beneath a thin layer of disturbed dirt, she saw it. Bones, not old, yellowed relics. These were fresh. Her flashlight flickered once, twice, and then died, plunging her into absolute darkness. She felt the cold puff of air against her cheek, like breath. "Now," the voice whispered, its kindness gone, replaced by a chilling possessiveness. "It's your turn to stay." She tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the oppressive dark. She turned to flee back up the stairs, but each wooden step seemed to stretch into an impossible length, twisting and contorting into the ceiling above. The last thing Olivia Kane ever saw was the faint, blood-red glow of the living room chandelier, swinging gently back and forth, as if in quiet celebration. Weeks later, the Ashmore house was back on the market, another unbelievable bargain. The new owners, a young optimistic couple, found Olivia's smartphone on the kitchen counter. It had been recording for hours, the file filled with nothing but white noise and static. But if you were to put on headphones and turn the volume all the way up, listening intently to that ocean of static, you might just hear it. A new whisper, buried deep beneath the noise. A woman's voice, welcoming you to her home. And if you listen even closer, you might hear a second fainter sound, a low guttural rumble, the sound of the house laughing. Thanks for watching. If this story sent a chill down your spine, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe, and maybe think twice before buying that old fixed-upper. You never know who or what you'll be living with.